wanted to start by saying that we've got both of our organizations are flourishing. We're doing all sorts of interesting history-related events. Also, later on this year, we've got a South County Cemetery tour. We'll be going out to Indian Diggins and Fairplay again this year, and Diamond Springs, and then on Diamond Springs Cemetery tour later on in September. And then our big event of the year is, as Linda said, Save the Graves on October 17th. The theme for this year is Everyday Heroes, Breaking the Mold. Jill, that's coming up here shortly, was one of the featured actors last year. I got to talk about you for a minute. She's not only been the president of the Historical Society for several years, a long time, and she's overseen a lot of this rebirth and all the events that are happening there now on her watch. But she's also a great researcher, a published author, and shockingly, a great actress. So it's really not fair that one woman can have all those talents, leadership, research, writing, and acting. It's just not fair. But she's also a good friend, and so she'll be actually portraying a fairly famous local woman who drove on the Lincoln Highway shortly after it was created. Fascinating woman, and I won't tell you any more about that, but that's the third part of our day here. We've got a short video that she's also created, so add videographer to that list of credentials. Just a 3.5-minute video. She owns and maintains a Model A, and so she drove on some of the portions of the road we'll be talking about, and she's created a lovely short video of that. So my presentation is going to be also multi-part. I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of the evolution of these roads, how they got their start, just a minute or two. And then we're going to talk about the Lincoln Highway, how it was conceived and how it got implemented, which is a fascinating national history story. And then we're going to get super local and walk you through the route in the West County between Folsom and Placerville, every inch of the way. There's all sorts of places where you can see this original 1913 to 1916 concrete, and once you start looking for this, it's kind of addictive. It's fun. So let me see. I've got a clicker up here, don't I? Just press this once in the middle. All right. That way. All right. So before there were highways, there were trails. And this is a long and complicated topic that I'm going to try to do in 1 minute. And I will say that if you are interested in this, and people get really, really interested in this, there is yet another group that we both belong to called the Oregon California Trails Association, or OCTA. And I have brought a stack of their glossy, beautiful magazines here. Take one. They're piling up in my bedroom. So and all these organizations, by the way, Historical Society, Save the Graves, OCTA, inexpensive as heck to be a member of, and they send you these beautiful and informative newsletters. I failed to mention the lovely, every 2 months, the Historical Society publishes Tailings, fascinating stories of local history you won't get anywhere else. What's an annual membership cost now? Probably about $25. So anyway, the first trail here is the California Trail. It's like all of the first trails, it's just paths that the native peoples used because there was trading. We had all these different there was more tribes in California than all the rest of the country put together. And these were very autonomous. Each one was their own thing. But they traded with each other. And so there was trails. And so here in the United States, the fur trade takes off in the early 1800s, and these mountain men are crawling all over the mountains to get beaver pelts and stuff. And they're doing it on foot because the terrain is so rough that you cannot get a wagon in these places. So maybe they got a donkey with a load on it or something, but they're just doing it on foot. But one of these guys, a particularly interesting guy, I called him a weird old dude here, because he gets the first wagons over the Sierras in pieces, but he gets it over in 1844, and he's 80 years old. And he goes on to have a whole career as a guide and all this stuff in this very, very advanced age. Anyway, that route gets cleaned up and adjusted, and it becomes the California Trail. And in the late 1840s, prior to the gold rush, it was the first and main way to get here by wagon from the east. And it was a real rough going, lots of river crossings. So part 2 of this little history of the trails thing is the Carson route. So other trails are being explored now because this California trail is just so hard. There's like 16 crossings of the Truckee River, and wagons don't do well in big water, and it's just all these problems. So there's a whole Mormon story. They're here early on. Long story there too. A bunch of them come in a boat, the Brooklyn, trying to escape the United States. They get here, and California's part of the United States when they arrive. Bummer. And then there's a Mormon battalion that marched like 1,800 miles to help fight in the Mexican War, and it was over by the time they got there. So there's all these Mormons that are suddenly here just right exactly when gold is discovered. And meanwhile, Brigham Young is getting more and more divisive with the U.S. government, and there's about to be a war between the United States of America and Mormons, and he calls them all back. So they're all headed back, and they take all this gold everywhere they go. They're sticking their pans out and get full of gold, but nope, gotta go. And they build this road that we know today as Mormon Immigrant Trail. Now, you guys, have you driven on that? Yeah. So that's really, roughly, not exactly. Things get adjusted over there, but this is a lot shorter and lower. So this whole horde of wagons now coming for the gold rush, they're like, I want that way. Thank you. And it becomes the main route for quite a while. But somebody else, there's always one more person cleaning it up. So we got this rancher over in Camino named John Calhoun Johnson, nicknamed Cockeyed for reasons. And he finds a native foot trail that connects Placerville and the Carson Valley, and it goes right by his farm, so he can sell them stuff. So he improves that, and that's even shorter and even lower, and it becomes the primary immigrant trail and remains so for many years until the completion of the railroad. The nation's first transcontinental automotive road is the Lincoln Highway. It will follow the Johnson's Cutoff route. Now, did I bring the book? We happen to have a descendant. I've always got to bring these books and wave them around because I'm so proud of my book collection. But there's a great book on Greenwood. You can get it in the library. You can buy it on Amazon, Old Greenwood. And then we happen to have, I think she is the great-grandson of Cockeye Johnson, Ellen Osborne, who is in the Historical Society and also OCTA. And so we've got direct connections to some of these people in our organizations. And she has written a book all about her great-grandpa and the raw deal he got in Placerville. But I'm going to leave that dangling because it's another great long story for another day. So wagons, the 1800s. Wagons are how you get around. Eventually, railroads. But there's a problem with wagons, and that is there's not enough roads. The roads that are there don't go anywhere. They're just centered around a town, and they go to like the farthest ranch and stop. There's no regional planning. We're not connecting places with roads. We haven't gotten to that point yet. And these roads are not maintained. So in the summer, the dust is unbearable, and many of them in the winter, they just flat out become impassable. And that's the way it was here in Placerville. The kids from South Lake Tahoe would come to Placerville for the winter to go to school before there was a school up there because you couldn't get between the two. Weirdly, the first group that tries to do something about this are bicyclers. The Good Roads movement is founded in the 1880s by bicycle people because they love bicycling, and you can't bicycle on these roads. Look at them. And so it percolates, and meanwhile, the car gets invented and it gets more reliable, but it's still not exactly an everyday thing. Gertrude here is going to tell you a little bit more about this, but in the turn of the century, these newfangled automobiles are seen as a novelty for the rich. Unnecessary, untrustworthy complication to the simple and obvious equine solution to personal mobility, and horses eat grass. Cars need gasoline, and the fledgling automotive industry needs better roads. What it really needs is a visionary. You are waiting for it, aren't you? There's the visionary, Carl. All right, so this guy's a pretty successful cat. He's already making a fortune doing the carbide gas headlights used on most of the early cars. His prior project was a little thing called the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's a rousing success, especially after he paved it with bricks. He later turns a Florida swamp into Miami Beach, and in 1912, he makes the audacious proposal of a coast-to-coast rock highway. Estimated cost of gravel, $10 million. We should be able to do it for $10 million. Communities along the way are going to provide the equipment and the labor. We just get them the gravel. Target completion date, 1915, in time for the San Francisco Panama Pacific International Exposition. For $5, anybody can join the Lincoln Highway Association. Now, $5 is a lot more then than it is now, right? But still, thousands of rural Americans are on it instantly, especially farmers who are dependent on this crappy system of roads to get their products to market. So, obviously there's a public demand for this. Now, Fisher, to help fund this, asked the car companies to donate 1% of their revenues to make it happen. A measly 1%. All but one agrees. Who doesn't agree? The famously frugal Henry Ford, also known as the first big setback. He's got the largest car company. By the way, not by much. Buick, which turned into the full General Motors, was right behind him at the point. He was still the original guy and the most influential and by far the craziest. He claims the public will never learn to fund good roads if private industry does it for them. Fisher does not give up. He brings in Goodyear president Frank Sieberling and Packard president Henry Joy. I mean, these guys are the car companies. They stand to make millions if this flies. Joy suggests, importantly, naming the highway after Abraham Lincoln, capturing patriotic appeal. A lot of marketing going on here. Lincoln Highway Association finalizes the route. They launched this Lincoln Highway Association that, by the way, reformed several years ago. And I didn't bring you that newsletter, but again, there are all kinds of people around here that are members of the current association, and they go out and explore routes and do road trips and have all sorts of fun. Anyway, the original one launches in 1913. Fisher, Carl, takes off on a road trip to explore routes and drum up support for the project. So this is a marketing visionary guy, right? So he's just making promises right and left. Oh yeah, we're going to come right through your main street. We're going to bring so much business to you. After weeks of deliberation, Joy announces the route. It passes through those states you see up there and ends in San Francisco. Route's got no deviations to pass through big cities, national parks, Kansas, or Colorado. And the stuff hits the fan because guess who has made promises in Kansas and Colorado? They scream murder, compromises, doglegs, and costly reversals ensue, but it gets built. So there we go. And you can see some of the doglegs. I'm going to talk about the split there by Reno in a minute. 3,300 miles. Now, they're not building new roads here, maybe a few miles, but they're just trying to connect existing roads and improve the thoroughfare. But some of them are definitely just dirt tracks in the rural areas. And the way they're identified is by the name, the Lincoln Highway. This is also called the named highway era because the Lincoln is just the first of many, many named highways, so many that it becomes totally confusing. The only way to identify which one you're on is by a colored band on a utility pole. And so some of these poles would have 8 bands. You know how today when you go into a strange city and the road is like 3 different roads and you're trying to decide if you're. So there's just colored bands, and people are getting lost like crazy. So they dole out a lot of gravel, and they encourage the communities to use them to clean up their portions of the road. And later, the concrete comes along. They're not even done with the project yet, and they start doing these areas called ideal sections. And these are tests of this newfangled concrete stuff for a roadway. And the tests go really well, and by the end of the evolution here, they're trying to get as much of this paved in concrete as possible. And what's exciting is that here in El Dorado County, we've got some of the largest stretches and most portions of original Lincoln Highway concrete that hasn't been jackhammered up or covered over with asphalt of anywhere. We've definitely got the longest virgin stretch on the West Coast. In El Dorado Hills. We'll get there for a minute, and then Jill's going to drive on it for us. So first, though, we got to get these things, the routes marked better. So what they do is the Lincoln Highway Association, before it winds down, takes the last of its money and buys a bunch of these concrete stands, that thing, which are tremendous collector's items today. There's one buried in the what's it called now, Sociology Coffee Shop in Placerville. There's one in the wall. They found it under the pavement when they, but they get the Boy Scouts to install these things like in one long weekend. And I don't know if you can see this picture. This kid, he's just like, Mom, don't make me do this anymore. I'm dying here. This is like hard work. Anyway, the Boy Scouts do this. And these things get set out, and it's a big deal. So that's the national story. That's how it gets built, okay? Now, in California, there's a big picture because the difference here, there's 2 routes through California. I originally assumed this was all sorts of marketing and posturing by El Dorado County and Placer County, but I was corrected by an expert. It was simply because they figured one or the other might be closed in the winter, and they wanted to keep one open all the time. So that's why, starting up here, it splits actually at Carson City here, and one goes through Placer County there, and also if you go to Auburn on Highway 49, the first road you come up to is Lincoln something or another. That's the Lincoln Highway. And then here is the route that we're going to be going on in a minute, through El Dorado County. Ours is far better, of course. Oh, yeah, and both of them come together. Both of them come together in Sacramento and go this way. This is much later. They go this way because there's no YOLO Causeway, and to get to Davis in the winter, you need to swim. So they actually get to the Bay Area over Altamont Pass. And there's a lovely road there, Altamont Pass Road. It's just, I think it's on there, just north of 680, I believe it is. So let's get to this thing in El Dorado County. We're going to pick up the route on East Bidwell Street in Folsom. The Lincoln Highway veered off East Bidwell on Old Placerville Road, which is still there, sort of. It's between the Hampton Inn and Costco, and it's called that, and they've actually put a sign up now on East Bidwell, but they tore up the original road, which I understand, but it's a shame nonetheless. The road doesn't get declared it doesn't get landmark status for some reason, and so our original concrete can just be jackhammered by anybody at any time. Anyway, when I first was taken on all this about 10 years ago by the local Lincoln Highway Association, they proudly showed me this stretch of original Lincoln Highway concrete basically at the base of the Costco parking lot, right parallel with the railroad lines there. But that whole commercial development between Costco and East Bidwell happened since then, and that's when we lost it. But anyway, Old Placerville Road, then and now, veers off to the left and goes under the current freeway alignment and heads towards White Rock Road. Right now, it dies in the middle of a massive housing division. But back then, it just went right next to the railroad tracks all the way to White Rock Road. It turned left, and it stayed on White Rock across Latrobe Road there in El Dorado Hills. And it stays White Rock Road. After you cross Latrobe, now town center is on your left and the post office, and it makes a big sweeping left turn. And then right before you go under the Silver Valley interchange, it turned right. And you can still turn right and go back there to Clarksville. It went through the middle of Clarksville. Okay, anybody here been to Clarksville? Yeah, all right. You guys rock. So this is going to look familiar to you, some of this stuff. Because Clarksville is full of original Lincoln Highway concrete and other fun stuff, too. First off, though, we got a rest in peace. This was, you can see they were already running bulldozers across it when I was there with the guys back in, I think that was 2009. All right. Here's a map. You can follow along. This is just what I just described. And I had to put the nod in there. This is another old presentation I did in Town Center. So you're not there, but you know that. Next. All right, you're also not here, but this is White Rock Road, and there's the Silver Valley interchange, and here's what they called Old White Rock Road. Just because I happened to show up at a Board of Supervisors meeting for something else one day when they were bringing this up. And I said, you can't change that name. And they said, okay. Anyway, these are all sites. We're going to come back to this map in a minute, but these are all Clarksville sites. So, backstory, I was a newspaper reporter in El Dorado Hills for several years, and I thought I was a photographer. And that's dangerous. So I spent way too much time taking pictures. I'm going to force you to look at them, but only briefly. So here's, next up we have 1920. Look at that, concrete already in 1920. Yowza. Very nice. Next, so the creek there's a creek that comes down from actually Bass Lake, and it drops right across the road there. And there's a bridge over it, and that bridge is why there'll never be massive houses or anything in Clarksville, because you would have to build another one of these bridges for tens of millions of dollars. So stop worrying about lots of houses in Clarksville. It's not going to happen anytime soon. What was weird was the developers who bought the old Tong Ranch and let us into this area, Clarksville, that was locked away for years. They were friendly and nice guys, and here's one of them, Jim Brunello. I love this guy. He welcomed us in. We formed a historical society in El Dorado Hills, and we were in there with some of the first people to see it in many decades. He got in there with us one day, walking around, and on that bridge, he found that his great-great-uncle built the bridge. He's a local boy, goes way back. He didn't know that. He had already bought the property, and he didn't know that. So he had a personal connection. They lost, Brunello and Wilkinson that bought Clarksville, they lost it in the recession. It's still up in the air. The guy that loaned them the money has it now, and I don't know what's going on. But anyway, here's what it looked like in the 1860s. And of course, it all burned down a bunch of times, so there's nothing except the hill in the background, recognizable today. But here we go, we're just across the bridge here, and the Peterson Cafe, which, okay, let's see, anybody here been to the Peterson Cafe? I don't think it could be that old anymore. It was the last little store in Clarksville. After the freeway alignment went up on the Highway 50 today, there was still a little store that hung on for years. Anyway, it's on the left here, just off the edge of the picture, and then there's a really cool stone Wells Fargo building on the right, and there's a better picture of the Wells Fargo building. It's fallen down, and we can't get any protection for it either. And here's the Peterson Cafe, which I thought was long gone until I talked to Mike Lester, who lives in the last house in Clarksville, right to the right of this. And he goes, "Oh, no, that's still there. I just built my garage around it." And he took me in this garage, and here's the original timbers from this building inside the garage. He just put a frame and put siding around it, wrapped it up. So it's kind of cool because there was again, not enough time to go into it, but there was a almost famous shooting in this thing here that, I mean, somewhere in there, there's still some bullets. All right, so let's go back to a map. Where are we? Where are we? We crossed over the bridge. There's the Peterson Cafe. There's the Wells Fargo building. There's an empty spot where the school used to be. And then there's some other stuff we'll get to. We'll look at the school more in a moment. All right, we got some really cool, so this is like a standing ghost town, for those of you that don't know about Clarksville, and you can drive this far. You are absolutely okay, just stay on the road. There's still, last time I was there, they were still standing, but if the wind blows too hard, they might not be. And one of them is the Kybers, and that is the Kybers that supposedly found the site for Sutter, for the, Marshall advocated something up north, and Kybers supposedly advocated this one, and Marshall went with Kybers' recommendation. And that's Sam Kybers. That's where he retired. Here's a kind of art photo, 26, that I took back when it looked better. This is when it looked better. And we're going to move on down towards the barn. Oh, I don't have a map up there. But see how pretty it is? With the Historical Society and preparing for Clarksville Day, I got to spend many hours in here pretty much by myself, whipping weeds and preparing it for Clarksville Day, trying to bring 6,000 or 7,000 people into a ghost town that hasn't had anybody in it for years is crazy. The risks were insane. Every one we did, people got hurt. We had wells covered with pieces of rotten plywood. We had mines covered with pieces of rotten plywood. And then the grass grows on the rotten plywood. So it's a perfect booby trap. Anyway, here's what you can see from the freeway. This is the red barn you see from Highway 50 when you look down into Clarksville. I call it the Tong Barn. Now note the roof line, because it was not always a barn, turns out. It was the Clarksville School. But remember the empty spot of dirt I pointed to? It got dragged. So the way to make sure that something never gets any landmark status, move it. And then put 2 wings on it to house more horses and cattle. So you modify it, you move it, it's got no protection. But hopefully it'll get protected. I, famously in my own mind, got a new roof put on it. Right in the transition between owners, I got Straight Line Roofing to come out and fix the gaping holes in the roof, and got banned from Clarksville by the new owners for that. But meanwhile, it's not raining inside, and those hand-hewn timbers will hopefully last another 100 years. That's called guerrilla preservation. All right, a couple fun pictures from the school. 1930. Can you make out any of the? Keep going, keep going. There. That's Jess Tong, one of the Griggs girls. That's me. That's Madeline Mosley. She was a little girl who ran that store at the very end, and she was still alive when we formed the Historical Society. She was so excited. She loved her Clarksville, and she would go to every meeting, and she was just a delight, eccentric as the day is long. This is today. That pole is still standing there, and there's a really cool outhouse behind it, too. All right. Let's keep going, Mike. Gotta go. All right, original barn, new barn. The route crossed over Highway 50. So this is a big hill. This is it's a big hill. They couldn't go over these hills in the day. They went around them. So around we go to this way onto this stretch of what's called Old Bass Lake Road. So this is all original concrete, all through this stretch here. More shots from when Mike thought he was a photographer. Not bad. Big lens. But you can see the basic characteristics of the road. It was narrow. And then later on, it got little asphalt sidecars put on it so that cars could pass. This is all a new stretch. And then, oh no, this is the old stretch, and I don't know what it is. Never mind. All right, so you go out there, and this is, I love El Dorado County because there's so many areas where you do not know what century you're in. I mean, the land is so torn up from mining or whatever. And this, you're adjoining Serrano. You're between Highway 50 and Serrano, and you are in one of those places. It's crazy. So here's this ancient road. Look at the condition of the road. You know, it's in good shape. There's not a lot of people living back there. How many here have been to the Mohana Ranch for an event? A couple. Okay, one of the high-profile people that lives out there is Mo Mohana. He's the one that wants to build the big Awani hotel-type structure on Bass Lake Road and Highway 50. And he has lived there for like 20 years, raised his family there. A lot of us think he's a pretty good guy. Anyway, yeah, nice stretch of road. The other end is also very cool, very rough. This is coming out on right into regular El Dorado Hills at the end of what's called Tong Road. The Tongs were this, they weren't Chinese, they sound Chinese, but they weren't. English family that has been in Clarksville forever until those two guys I talked about earlier bought it. So it goes, the route goes back across, let's go on, Jill. On the other side of the freeway, the route crosses back over, and here I discovered an old stretch of unused and I think it was unknown at the time. I was tremendously excited, and I think we got a map coming up next that shows exactly where that is. Yeah, that's so the road wraps around here, and then right in here, that's where that stretch of concrete is, and then there's already a Marble Valley Road right here, which goes down into Marble Valley here, but the Lincoln went, there's a billboard right here, and it goes right under the billboard and back to Old Country Club Drive. They moved Country Club Drive, but there's still an old stretch right there. So that's kind of cool. If you're a pavement pounder and like discovering this stuff, there it is, and you can feel the history in these places. So in Cameron Park, it continues on Country Club Drive. Here, and then it crossed back over the freeway again, right behind, is Applebee's still there? Yeah, right behind Applebee's, but there's no evidence that I can find of the old road right there, but that's the route. It went behind the Safeway, and then it also went behind, went down Duroc basically, but there's a car wash right there before, like is the last business in Cameron Park before you're into regular old Duroc Road. And if you walk behind that car wash, there it is. There's a stretch, about 20 feet of original Lincoln Highway concrete. And it's recognizable because they used big pebbles, way more so than in modern rock. So when you see this concrete with the big pebbles in it, that's the original stuff. All right, now we're up to Shingle Springs. It goes, it crosses, what is that? It ends up on Mother Lode Drive. And it's on and off Mother Lode, avoiding the hills. It's looping around. The most obvious loop that's kind of cool and you can see some old stuff on is Buckeye. If you take, you know how there's like two ways to get on Buckeye Road from Mother Lode Drive? The two ways are the original Lincoln Highway. And you can see an old thing that was, I mean, lots of stuff, businesses and homes got built on the highway there. There's also a whole railroad story in that area too, so but we don't have time to talk about that. It crosses Missouri Flat Road and goes on to Forney Road. That's right where the, I guess it's a dollar store now, and goes on down that windy stretch of Forney Road to the historic Weber Creek Bridge, and if I'm not mistaken, Jill's going to take us there as well. Very cool bridge. Yep, and so you get up to the In and Out, and basically it turns left again and goes down Placerville Drive. And again, it more or less follows it. And there's all sorts of places. I live around there, so I found all these. Original Concrete is in the Vicini parking lot on the hill opposite of Home Depot. So if you get Home Depot and look back across Placerville Drive, you'll see this flat thing on the opposite wall. That's the original roadway. There's a string of retailers at the northeast end of Placerville Drive. The Polaris and Mountain Mail used to be up there. And behind there is one of the really sharp turns of the Lincoln Highway. The guys that showed it to me were very excited because it was an unusually, they widened it an extra foot on each side because it was such a sharp turn. They'd never seen anything like it. And if you drive up and park in the parking lot of Kobe Pest Control, it's right there. It's right there on your right. It connects with the other areas. So it's all over there. It went right up to Main Street, Placerville, and went right down the middle of town. So Lincoln Highway went right down the middle of Placerville, and that is the end of your West County tour. But first I want to tell you about the convoy. Sort of the end, the Lincoln Highway Association had already ended, but the military wanted to test the utility of this new route as a military conveyance. And so there was a convoy. And so the convoy contained a young Lieutenant Colonel Eisenhower in 1919. And they passed right through here. It took all those guys, 81 vehicles, 2 grueling months. Because the road had been used by then, but not by big vehicles necessarily. And so they had a lot of little bridges that collapsed, and there was a lot of stopping and getting stuck. But the cool thing is that in Eisenhower's memoir, he cited that experience as one of 2 that influenced his decision to promote the interstate highway system that he did in the 1950s. The other experience he had was in Germany on the Autobahn during World War II. So it's funny because you got either end of the extreme. In 1919, the Lincoln Highway was about as far from the Autobahn as you can get. But he got behind, and that's the reason we have the interstate highway system we have today. All right, so this whole presentation I'm doing is because the guy that really knew this stuff died last year, and his name was Don. And so he closed this presentation with this quote. Road construction in the world was virtually unchanged from Roman times through the 19th century. Improvements in highway design during the 20th century were mind-boggling and continue to the present day. For a short period in U.S. history, driving was a pleasurable pastime. Motor vehicles were called touring cars. Hudson even had a model called the Terraplane. Gone are the Sunday drivers and going for a ride as relaxing recreation. For those of us that remember these days, trying to describe the pleasure it gave us, or perhaps our parents, to the current generation often results in disbelief. So thank you, Don. Appreciate all your hard work on this. Jill worked with him on 1,000 projects. Knew him much better than I did, but I kind of inherited the Lincoln Highway stuff from him.
So I suppose what I'll have to do is shift gears, because I didn't tell you who I really was. Change hats. And in the history business, there's lots of hats. So I am not Jill Kearney. She has not been born yet. I'm looking forward to seeing the future. But my name is Gertrude Kirk. Now, I've been reminiscing about my life, and I like to think I lived a fairly simple one compared to how folks like you live today. I realize that in my lifetime, the more I think about it, I saw a lot of changes. Changes in the world, changes in technology, and changes for women. I came to El Dorado County with my parents when I was about 10 years old, about 1899. My father, William S. Kirk, and my mother, Annie Summers Graff, they came from Pennsylvania. Now, Father became the owner of the Placerville Nugget newspaper. He later merged it with the El Dorado Republican. Now, let me tell you a little bit about a story here. Yeah, Republican. I learned to typeset, and I learned reporting, working for Father. But he was into other business ventures as well, and one of which was changing the way people traveled. See, about 1909, he purchased the first automobile dealership in Placerville. It was called Ford Auto. He later changed the name to the Placerville Automobile Company. Now, in those early years, automobiles were not very common. A lot of folks hadn't ever even seen one up close. We sold the car to the common man of El Dorado County. But in those days, the horse was still part of the competitive market. Now, you may have heard that Henry Ford made the car affordable, and that is absolutely true. Before the Model T, cars were very expensive. Well, let's see. That was a while back there. 1909. People were concerned about all the moving parts in those cars. And they were afraid. They said, my horse can just eat hay and grass. Where are you going to get gasoline when your car runs out? And they were kind of scared. You know, I don't think that's too scary, too difficult, too dangerous to learn how to drive one of those things. Now, Father and I did our best to stay their fears. You could say we made a pretty good sales team. He would show them the car and all its attributes, and I would not only demonstrate how to operate the vehicle, I taught the buyer how to drive. As folks would come in with a horse and they'd trade up to a car, and here I was, this young lady, teaching folks twice my age all about this new technology. Those were fast-changing times. In 1911, California made it legal for women to vote in local elections. I registered to vote January 3rd of 1912, and I am proud to say I was the first lady to cast a vote in El Dorado County. Father and I were still operating the Ford dealership, and there were still plenty of folks saying that, they just couldn't see the car replacing the horse. They said, well, the car just won't go where the horse can. So Father and I came up with a pretty good publicity stunt. That pretty white courthouse on Main Street, Placerville, was still brand new. We got permission, set the date, and when a crowd had gathered and the newspaper reporters were there, I got behind the wheel of one of our touring cars and I drive it right up the steps to the courthouse. Caused quite a splash. Oh my gosh, that was fun. Father took the picture from the newspaper, one of the pictures there, and he hung it on the wall of the dealership. Pretty much all he had to do was just to point to that picture to seal a deal. That was fun. You know, there were other cars out there, and I didn't have a problem driving the car, the Model T. But those early models were not really built with the lady driver in mind. See, to get the car started, you had to get in front of the vehicle and hand crank the engine. In 1914, Dodge Brothers came out with an electric start engine. Oh, that was nice. You could get all dressed up to go to town or just for a drive and not worry about getting dirty and disheveled hand cranking your engine. We bought the first Dodge dealership in 1914 in Placerville. The problem was, Ford didn't want his salesman selling anything but Ford cars. I was the operator of the Dodge dealership. Father could keep the Fords. 1914, that was the year the Great War broke out in Europe. United States wouldn't enter until 1917, and I was eager to help somehow. It was supposed to be the war to end all wars. It was the end of feudal kingdoms, and it was a call for patriotism. I joined the American Expeditionary Forces. That was our country's military forces. Now, I was a part of it. And let me explain. Our president, Woodrow Wilson, he wanted to keep the U.S. troops separate, not just have them fill in the ranks of the French and English armies. Our commander was General John J. Pershing. Now, to get involved, I didn't sign up with the soldiers. I joined the YWCA, that's Young Women's Christian Association. Now, that group formed as far back as the 1850s. But our job then was to help boost the American soldiers' morale, provide recreational activities. Pershing's forces started with about 127,000 troops in 1917. And by 1919, we had nearly 2 million. Now, I joined July of 1918, and I served in the Women's Division Canteen and Automobile Service in France, while they're negotiating treaties of that year, of course. I served hot chocolate and coffee. I visited the injured men. I wrote letters home for them, and I documented my time, and I sent my letters home where my father published them in the El Dorado Republican. You could say I'd become our own hometown war correspondent. Yeah, I served most of my time in France. Pershing had based the expeditionary forces in the Lorraine region. Now, my knowledge and ability to drive different kinds of vehicles was very important in this line of work. And I did drive around quite a bit. You could say I toured Europe. I even got to meet General Pershing. Yes, I remember that day. That war took so many lives. Not to mention the great Spanish flu pandemic that the veterans took home with them. It's a lot of terrible destruction. Turned out to be just World War I, not the end of war. Think about it, I lived through 2 world wars, maybe a couple that didn't want to get mentioned as being official, too. I will tell you one thing, that the death and destruction is something you do not get over. By the time I got back to the States, I was nearly 30. On the East Coast, like a lot of these veterans returning after the Whirlwind War, it is difficult to come back down to normal. What was I going to do next? You heard about it. The Army was organizing that they called it a patriotic military parade. The young officer, Dwight Eisenhower, organized about 300 and some odd troops, 81 military vehicles, headed west out of Washington, D.C. on the new Lincoln Highway. The parade was nearly 3 miles long. Now, that sounded like an adventure. And I still had a dealership in Placerville. So what did I do next? I went to Detroit, I went to the Dodge factory, and I bought a brand new touring car and headed west about 2 months after Eisenhower's parade. A friend of mine from the YWCA, Mrs. George Pavey, came with me. My letters home were more published correspondence and great promotion for my auto sales. I drove 3,340 miles, crossed 9 states without any difficulties. It was a fitting finale to the AEF experience. Everywhere we went, we were recognized by veterans who thanked us for what we had done for them in the canteen service. Now, I am thankful that my parents taught me to be independent, because if I had not been independent, I would not have gone to Europe. And if I had not gone to Europe, I would have never met Richard Patterson Cornelissen. We met in Paris. Like me, he'd left behind a business to join the war, and I remembered his kind brown eyes. And he must have appreciated my adventurous and independent nature, because we kept in correspondence, and he came all the way out from Florida to marry me in Placerville in 1921. Father, as a wedding present, gave us a Ford, not a Dodge, a Ford, but it's okay. It was a 1919 Ford, which meant it had its own electric start engine, and it had this race car body on it. We drove that car all the way back to Florida on our honeymoon trip. Richard and I shared love of independence when it came to the automobile. See, before the war, he was involved in real estate. But after we were married, he joined a new kind of service called the California Highway Patrol. The idea was to promote road safety. We lived in Marin and Lake County, but we always considered Placerville to be our real home, where family lived. Our daughter, Gloria, was born in 1923. And while I'm proud as anything to say I was a homemaker, I did operate an insurance business when we lived near Clear Lake. Gloria got to go to high school here in Placerville, and we encouraged her to have the same independent streak. She may have exceeded my expectations a few times. She even followed in my footsteps when World War II came along. She left her second year of college to work for the government, teaching factory workers at an important aircraft plant in Mississippi. She came back to Placerville, settled down, went on to have my 2 grandchildren. Now, I lived a good life. And when Richard passed away, I was back living permanently in Placerville. I was a member of the Order of the Eastern Star and the American Legion Women's Auxiliary, and I loved spending time with my friends in the Shakespeare Club. You can bet I continued to cast my vote at every election. I may have registered as a Republican, but I always voted for what I thought was right, irregardless of political parties. I died at 86, happy and content, knowing that I was part of some big changes that were good for my daughter and my grandchildren. And I hope the lessons learned in my lifetime would not be lost in the future. And well, here you all are, learning about that time, my time, and I am pleased to have shared it with you.
Encore.
Oh, yeah. It's the same, just a little different sometimes.
All right. Thank you, Jill, and thank all of you. This is a really inspiring group. I want to, again, I have a history group. She has a history group. You are essentially a history group. We ought to, I would hope to see some cross-pollination, especially the Historical Society is doing a lot of great things right now. It's been largely defunded by the county. They're running that museum over there with volunteers, and so it's a good time to get involved.